So through that has driven us to create a travel app called ZEAL. It allows people to live, work, and roam around the world using AI to be able to connect people to the places, experiences, accommodations, restaurants that fit their lifestyle, their behavior, their interests. So right now people, gravitate towards TripAdvisor and they get the same top 10 regardless of their age, their lifestyle, their budget. Think of this tailoring your own top 10 to you based off of your previous experience and how adventurous you're currently feeling or where you're looking to go.
Welcome to the Veilstripe podcast powered by Velocity Strategics. Today, we're joined by Eric Sutphin. On the podcast, we like to have industry leaders and entrepreneurs that have taken the journey and the initiative to create their own companies and start their own projects. So I just want to say thank you to Eric for joining us today. Eric, thank you so much for taking time out of your day.
Thanks for having me.
Of course, absolutely. He's joining us from Colorado. Yes, is it Vail or is it Denver?
Colorado.
Denver, Colorado. Broncos just had a huge win.
Yeah.
For all the big football fans out there. Eric, so usually the first thing I like to ask the guests on the podcast is your story. I think stories make the world go around, and sometimes I think we take for granted that maybe our story might not that be interested, but the more I speak to guests on the podcast, the more I realize that the stories are more intriguing than anyone even thinks, or how intriguing that our story is even to ourselves. So if you can tell us a little bit how it is you got into the industry that you're in, what is it that made you get into this? Was there any sort of catalyst, or is it something that you've always wanted to do?
So I've always had a passion for travel. As a kid, was able to get out and do the great outdoors, climbing, snowboarding, hiking through the Boy Scouts. And so got to take some amazing trips to the bottom of the Grand Canyon, to Key West, sailing around some of the islands in British Columbia. So was just hooked. And so I knew I wanted to study abroad and learn Spanish. So in college, got the opportunity to study abroad in Chile. And that immersion to be able to spend 5-6 months in a place and really get to understand the culture and what makes it tick and how is it different and what is the influence of art and food and culture really just set me on a path to be able to travel the world. In school, I went and graduated for advertising and digital studio arts. So creating my own marketing and ad agency was kind of the path of least resistance and where I wanted to work. And through time, I kind of gravitated towards hospitality, towards tourism, where my two interests align on the professional front and on the personal pleasure front. So I ended up working in that domain and with tourism boards and hotels and destinations, and just really loved being able to create inspiration and impact through travel, because it is, as you said, the storytelling component, what drives people and culture and what motivates and influences them. And I found, we have far more similarities than we do differences. As I've traveled the world and most of the continents, I've found that, the unity behind people is far more similar than it is than we have differences. So that's a little bit about me, and I'm happy to, dive down the rabbit hole if you'd like.
Absolutely. Please tell us what it is you're up to now.
So through that has driven us to create a travel app called ZEAL. It allows people to live, work, and roam around the world using AI to be able to connect people to the places, experiences, accommodations, restaurants that fit their lifestyle, their behavior, their interests. So right now people, gravitate towards TripAdvisor and they get the same top 10 regardless of their age, their lifestyle, their budget. So think of this tailoring your own top 10 to you based off of your previous experience and how adventurous you're currently feeling or where you're looking to go. It'll connect nomads to other nomads, like-minded experiences and things, creating an itinerary for them for weeks or months on end that fits their lifestyle and interests.
Very cool. So you basically found a way to optimize what would be a personalized itinerary for somebody that's looking to be on an adventure somewhere. Yes,
exactly. It'll allow them to kind of populate the things that they want to do and then be able to navigate a destination and start to develop an itinerary that fits them around their, work schedule, or if they're traveling for longer, if they have a routine of working out, if they're traveling with a companion or a partner, or they've got a conference, how do they enable themselves to know where to go, and how do they tap into those local experiences, right? Some of the coolest experiences I've had while traveling have been somewhat impromptu, or because a bartender or a scuba dive master will tell me where to go. Stuff that I otherwise wouldn't have found on Google Maps, or maybe didn't have the best reviews or the highest number of reviews, but they're like, you have to try this mom and pop restaurant. Like, it's going to take a little bit of time to eat, to get the food, but it's so worth it. And you're going to be out, on kind of like, crummy chairs, but like it's going to be unforgettable meal. And it like, then you meet a lot of locals at those places that you get to converse with. And like those are the moments and experiences that stick with us and forge those connections. So that's the idea, is to enable people to find those more effortlessly so that they can spend less time on the device and actually more time, interacting and engaging with people around the world.
Very cool. So I think anyone who's traveled knows that the best experience anywhere you go is when you actually ask the locals or the natives, what is the best thing to do? I think when I went to Japan, that was like, all right, where do you think I should go? And they're like, this is where you need to go. And I can immediately pivot to whatever the recommendation is. And I end up having a way better time than if I went off of like TripAdvisor or, any other like generic travel app or company.
Yeah, people want you to, have the best experience. They want to be able to share that. Most of the time, I find 99% of the time, people are very hospitable and welcoming. And my favorite question to ask is, if I were your brother, say I was your brother coming out and I'm visiting, where, this weekend, where would you take me? What would you do? What can I not miss? Or, at a restaurant, what's the, one meal that, is the chef's favorite or I can't miss? And usually you get pointed in the best direction.
And by the way, let me take a step back. Excuse me. I want to make sure that folks know how to find you. If you can tell us how to spell ZEAL. Is it ZEAL?
Correct. ZEAL. And website is zealremote.com.
What are the industry changes that you've seen in the last couple of years with the advent of AI and the optimization and implementation to, like you mentioned earlier, to take the device out of our hands almost and to be more present, be more immersed in where we're traveling to?
I'll say since COVID, there was a lot of curiosity around if working remote and having hybrid and remote teams was going to stick, with the back to office policies and, high rents and stuff, where digital nomads or remote workers are actually going to be here to stay. And years later, undeniably, we can say that they are. AI now has further enhanced the ability for people to automate their workflows. We're seeing AI being able to personalize and customize people's experiences. There's certain hotel brands and chains that we're seeing using AI to be able to, say, scrape someone's public data from Google or Facebook and Instagram so that they can be able to have as much information, kind of their profile, and can custom tailor, whether that be experiences or restaurant menus and different types of food for them, to knowing how accessible they are. Are they going to need to be able to walk around? Do they need transportation, the like? So there's a lot of AI that I think is changing the industry to enable this personalization and deepen the experience that people are able to have. Well, people are still, using AI on their phones and these apps to be able to get there. My hope eventually is that it allows for more of these conversations. It allows for more interaction and allows for more depth in connection with people and experiences as they get out there, because they're going to be in the right place, right? You've worked in the hotel industry, and, it's unfortunate when someone, comes up to the bar and they're like looking at the menu and they're like, this is way overpriced. Well, they're just in the wrong place, right? And for someone else, they're like, no problem. But if you're at the wrong place and you're expecting a different experience and your, prejudgments or your expectations are different than what you get, then it's a negative, or it's not as good of a good experience as it should be, right? So I think curating and connecting people to the things that fit their lifestyle, that make it feel personal to them, is where AI is going to enhance the experience and make it more memorable for the end consumer.
That's very thoughtful. How cool. So when you started this, right, you have a pretty good background, and that's cool that you can speak Spanish. That's something you can always, it's always adds an extra layer to service, that when you can give it to somebody who doesn't speak English so well. That's something that I had a bit of an advantage of growing up in Miami. I'm bilingual. My parents are Hispanic, but, obviously in school, it's all English. So I always had that kind of like extra tool in my belt. Anytime there was a guest, whether it was there or New York or out here in the West Side, they're like, he only speaks Spanish. They're like, hey, Johnny, come here. I need your help for a second. People always like when you can kind of cater to them, and especially when it's something unexpected, meaning the layer that you're talking about, like, hey, if this is your budget, the AI can use that as an extra layer of data or a data point to give you the better experience. If you go to this hotel, which is a 5-star hotel or 4-star hotel, might not be so fun if you're expecting it to be a $40, $50 dinner. Those dinners out here, or the nice, the luxurious resorts can rack up pretty quickly, especially when you can consider the room rates at where they are nowadays.
Exactly. Now that's the idea, is really use AI to drive that personalization and connection, right? It's not just, appropriate pricing of, finding the right restaurant that kind of fits your budget. You've, gone to restaurants that on Google Maps have 4.8 stars, but when you go, there's going to be a 30 or 45-minute line out the door. So how do you find the place that is more of a local mom and pop, same budget, but AI is going to say, hey, it's not quite busy, or, there's not going to be a line at this time. So make a reservation or show up at 5:30 instead of at 6:30, and you'll be able to get, seated and have a better experience. So I think AI can be able to curate and drive behavior in a more meaningful way that then allows for you as the user to not have all the complications of waiting in line, or how do you get there, or the like, right? You can just have a more seamless and more enjoyable experience.
That's very interesting. Yeah, I had a friend that talked about something that you just touched on. There was a show on Netflix, a documentary on street foods. And there's a lady, I want to say it's in Osaka. She is a street vendor. She sells food on the street. She got so good at it that she ended up earning a Michelin star. And then when she got the exposure, the hype is insane. Anyone hears Michelin star and they're like, oh my God. So when my friend was there, the line, like you said, can be out the door just to get like a bowl of like her special fried rice or whatnot. And so she ended up paying somebody $40 to wait in line for like 4 hours. And then when the person finally picked up the food, they text her and like, hey, your food's ready. So there's a huge demand for what it is you're doing here. That's very cool. If I can switch lanes for a second, when you started this, obviously, like I said earlier, you have a pretty good background on it. What was the North Star? What was the thing that, besides having something that can service folks, what is it that the dream ZEAL Remote app looks like in a year or 5 years from now, when you're like, this is exactly what it is I want it to be?
I see it being your like travel advisor and co-pilot in your pocket. It is your AI personalized intelligence that is able to companion you for the best possible travel experience, whether that's for a week and a family vacation, or whether that's for the nomad and expat that is traveling full time. So for us, the North Star is really, how do we create that inspiration and impact through travel, the idea of storytelling and driving people into more local, authentic experiences that are more meaningful and more influential in their lives. And how does that ripple? How does that impact the local community? So for us, while we absolutely work with some of the larger names, we find that driving people and experiences to those mom and pops to have that personalized experience, to have a tour guide or someone that they can relate to, is going to have the local impact by driving money to and through the economy versus being directed towards large funds and investors where profit is the goal. Experience is the goal, and the more we can drive people and commerce and revenue to these mom and pop and small businesses in destinations, the more that's going to have a global impact.
Very cool. So you're definitely helping the little guy here. It's not just making the rich guy somewhere up in an ivory tower more rich. That sounds like that's kind of like the impact you're trying to have.
Very
here,
much
yes?
so, yeah.
Okay. And so looking at things today, what would you say is really clicking for you and your company and the mission?
I find that the idea of gamifying and tokenizing behavior and rewarding early and often is a key one. We find a lot of other apps and tools and such in the space are focusing, on one division or one component of what ZEAL is incorporating. And so by not only having kind of multiple facets, but then engaging contribution, encouraging impact, quality reviews, short form content, substance, hosting events, the like, that it creates loyalty and engagement and, the stickiness factor. That I'll give a real life example. Google reviews. Yelp
Yes.
reviews, right? You leave a review, you post some photos and videos, you get a little gamification and badge, but those don't translate to anything. You can't take those and like redeem them like credit card points. How great would it be if the app knows that you're in town, points you towards an awesome restaurant or experience of your choice. You go and you have an app, you leave the review to enable and encourage someone else to be able to have a better experience there. And in kind, then the business is able to push you a notification saying, thank you so much for your contribution. Come back in for a buy one, get one, or a free appetizer on us. If you were actually rewarded for your contribution, how great would it be to be able to, feel heard, to feel that reciprocity? You'd want to be able to do that more. And I'm not seeing, any of these other apps do that. So from gamifying, reviews and reputation management to actual content creation, like TikTok and a lot of these apps are paying creators. How do you drive that behavior and, incentivize bringing like-minded travelers into the space? I see that as, a key differentiator and something that our members are really liking.
That's very cool. So you kind of, like you said, gamify, incentivizing using the app and kind of be reciprocal in the sense of like you get an experience and you say, this is how dope this was. And you get points for it that you can then cash in for even more experiences.
Exactly.
Right?
The more amazing food trucks. I was just in Hawaii and, they've got a ton of amazing mom and pop restaurants that are in food trucks that don't, aren't establishments. They're by the beach and through Southeast Asia, just incredible Michelin star restaurants and stuff in food courts. Do we change the way content is driven to say, hey, you got to check out this vendor? They're only here on Tuesdays or they open at 6, but you have to, when you're coming back from the beach and into town, you got to stop by here, right? Giving those tips and tricks and hacks that add value to someone's experience that they otherwise wouldn't have learned about, needs to be, or really should be. It hasn't been, but it needs to be, seen for what it is, value creation. So how do you incentivize and encourage people to do that? Give them something of value in kind.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Because for Google, when I leave a review, I think when I look at reviews or even on Amazon, I'm not really reading any of them unless I'm really like on the fence about a specific service or item. I just see, do they have like a bunch of them, like 300 or 4,000 or 1,000? And do they have at least 4 to 5 stars? That's kind of, but after that, it's like, it's gone. Let me ask you this. So you are a hospitality guy and what it looks like. We've all been to our favorite restaurant and what a great experience it is. I think that it's fair to say that at a restaurant that gives you X service and above average food, I would go back to before I go back to a restaurant that has the best food in the world, but the server had attitude or they just did something that kind of made you feel like unwelcome. Right. So, and I say this because when folks do go to restaurants and they're not familiar with what goes into hospitality, and if you've been in hospitality, you've seen, if you have not already worked in a kitchen, you've been on the other side of the food line, and the amount of prep work and execution and coordination that it takes to get the appetizer to the table right after the drink got there, and then have the food fired and have the main course get there no more than like 10 minutes after the first course got removed, and so on and so forth. By the time somebody had a great experience, the coordination and execution is like this complex ballet that goes into in a restaurant experience. And I'm using the restaurant experience because it applies to, I think, what it is you're doing here with ZEAL. To execute what you're doing on my end as a consumer, I can go to, let's say, Japan and be like, all right, I'm here now. What do I do? And it's just kind of laid out for me according to, my profile, what my interests, my allergies, the size of my wallet, how deep my pockets are, X, Y, Z. But on the back end, on your end, as the chef in the kitchen and the sous chef that has to coordinate all his staff, in your case, it would be the challenges that it goes into, let's say, developing something like this. What are the biggest challenges when it comes to that in that aspect, and the biggest challenges that you face in reaching the folks that are going to most benefit from ZEAL?
Great question. And I want to just dissect what you said, which is, there's kind of 3 different pillars here, right? There's experience, which you hit on several times. There is the human connection, right? And then there's the product. The product in that case is the food. The human connection is, the server, the experience, the conversation. It is the interaction from the hostess to, paying the bill. do you see, the chefs cooking in the back line and get that full experience, right? That is, all three work simultaneously together. So for us, while the product itself is complicated, and the challenge is how are we building AI agents and, machine learning that is able to grow with the members and tailor the experience to each of their lifestyles. And that's dynamic. When you're going to a conference and an event, you might be very interested in staying at a different place than, when you're traveling with your girlfriend or with your family. So how do we take these considerations when you're on that journey to be able to match you to the hostel, to the 4-star hotel, to the live work apart hotel? And so for us, how do we have that dynamic learning that adjusts, because you might, have a different budget when you're traveling with your girlfriend than you do when you're traveling by yourself. And so, for us, there are a lot of kind of nuances in how do we take the human experience and mirror that in a development infrastructure so that it's able to take, these variables and change them as you grow. Whether, that then is complemented by that human connection. How do we facilitate, onboarding, the customer experience, the conversations and education with our members so that it isn't just a one-sided product. They actually are engaging not only with the ZEAL team, but other members, events on the ground, events online, getting connected with other like-minded travelers while they're out there so that it's not just an app, an itinerary builder for them. It's a experience facilitator. They can go do yoga with people on the beach on a Tuesday at night, or they can hear about, the fire circle or the waterfall and have people to go with, and share those experiences, make them more memorable.
Very cool. Okay. So when having said all that, what would you say are the most persistent frustrations that come with this, when it comes to the development of the app or the execution and, reaching the audience? Because it's music to my ears. If I'm just going to like wing it, I'm not somebody that loves to plan everything. I'm not a planner. I've noticed that in my experience, when I wing it, I've had the most experience. That's why I don't have the structure for any of the podcast episodes, because the conversation is best when it goes where it is supposed to go, where the current is supposed to take it. So, I had been to Japan, and one of my buddies, he's a planner. He has to like look at everything and plan everything. And we're going to go here and like dot the map and that whole thing. But with this, I feel like I don't have to. I can wing it and it's still planned, but I'll get exactly what it is I want. So, that's something that is really attractive. And I think that if it reaches the majority of the folks that have the luxury to travel, it would be a no-brainer pretty much. When it comes to once the app is live, if it's not already out live, or even leading up to, the next goal, the next milestone for ZEAL, what would you say is the main frustration that you deal with on a daily basis? Something that you have to it's the one thing that makes it a little bit tough, because nothing is easy. If it was easy, anybody would do it, right? But you're doing something that's tough.
Yeah, that's a great question. Business is all about how do we navigate the challenges in front of us and, navigate them as efficiently and impactfully as possible. So for us, some of those right now are in procuring kind of the next round of funding for building out some of these additional AI enhancements that are going to drive the user experience as we and the members share feedback on what they want. So we're working on closing that, and that will really supercharge some of the efforts. But in the meantime, right now, kind of staying active with the community, continuing to get that pulse as the world changes, as things change. How are we getting an understanding of what is important to, the members, what functionality, what destinations are new and upcoming and hot, right? Where are new airports being built, and how do we stay top of mind? Because, Tulum might have been really hot a few years ago, but they seem to be struggling a little bit right now. So what is the next up and coming destination? And, that doesn't have all the seaweed and such that they've got to clean up. So, those are the things for us right now is how do we continue to have that real-time pulse and kind of feedback loop to stay relevant.
I see. Okay. So obviously, like everything, it takes a little bit of funding. What are are there any key metrics that you like to focus on when it comes to the prospect or a successful future for ZEAL for Remote ZEAL?
Yeah, I think ultimately, of course, client and member retention and engagement is going to be one of our core KPIs that we need to have a pulse on. How often are people coming back and using the app, not only while they're traveling, but while they're at home? Are they using it to pre-plan the next trip and how far out? Are they using it for inspiration and education on where to go next? And travel. So all of those things are going to be really influential for us. Revenue is going to be a byproduct of the impact. So the more impact, the more engagement, the more value we add to our members, and the happier they are and staying with us, then that really is going to be, the key success for us. Growth will come organically thereafter. So initially it is about getting those champions, getting those few hundred that, are loyal and advocates, and being able to sing our praise and champion this and share it within their communities and their networks.
Very cool. I love what you said, that the money is a byproduct. I think that in any service, whether it's a product or a service, when somebody goes to a restaurant, the main thing with when having a guest at a restaurant or a client for your company, the idea is to provide value with the service that you offer. And the income is merely a symptom of a successfully executed plan. I love to hear that. When people, I think, have that initial kind of approach to any business or service that they offer, that usually is an honest approach, and people really like that when they realize that the person that they sought out, or that person sought them out, and they realize that the person is there to help or improve or provide some kind of value, is it makes it easy for them to be like, I trust this person, I trust their service, let me go with this.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a value exchange at the end of the day. Right? Time, money, energy, all different kind of currencies of value. And the more you can add substance and depth to that, the more valuable and influential it is.
Very cool. So if you could wave a magic wand right now and solve one problem that you're like, oh, this sucks, I hate dealing with this. This is something that keeps coming up, and somebody that is developing something unique, because I don't think a lot of people are kind of up to what you're doing. Other folks are opening up, standard vertical businesses or brick and mortar restaurants or something, but this is a little bit more nuanced. Not a lot of folks have jumped on the AI train, so to speak. So with what you're doing, what would you be able to solve with one wave of your hand right now?
The ability to do it all. I think that we have a lot of lofty visions and aspirations of what this can be. Different modules, different functionality, different ways to add value. So we're going to need to prioritize and roll those out for our members, sequentially. But if I could wave that magic wand and just have it all done and have it done yesterday, that would be incredible. But that is part of the journey. That's part of the process. And so we're enjoying that process and being agile and adapting with it.
Very cool. Well, Eric, I just want to thank you so much for carving a slice out of your day with us. I know that you have obviously a lot of work to do with everything that you're describing. Anyone who's for those who are not familiar, and I think anybody in the hospitality would be, with the phrase the swan theory. Do you know what you're familiar with that, right?
I am, but go ahead and share it for the audience that might not be.
So the swan theory, for those who are not familiar, is, the swans are super graceful. They land very gracefully. They're this beautiful bird that is a symbol for beauty and elegance, but underneath you see them underwater and their feet are just going like 100 miles an hour. And that's kind of what hospitality has always been. And that's something that, the swan would be the app, but on the backside of the feet, not flailing, but literally pushing and driving, is folks like yourself that are every business that is successful and puts in the hard work to make life easier or more fun for the consumer or their clients. That's something that I see. It just came to mind when you were describing what you're up to.
Yeah, that is the hospitality experience for sure. I mean, their events, hospitality, a job well done is almost unnoticed, right? But it is remarkable because it takes so much effort and planning to be able to execute it at that level. It's like, it reminds me of advertising. Short story, a week or so ago, was driving in the car and my friend hates ads, but and especially Pandora, right? You can pay to unsubscribe, but
Yikes.
when they're intrusive or when the volume goes up, when they're annoying, it's really obvious. But when they're seamless, you don't notice them. And he started having a conversation. I'm like, where did that come from? He was like, couldn't pin it. I was like, that was that ad. You were just, started dialogue around that, but you didn't even notice. It does work when it's done well. Same thing with this Black Swan concept,
Absolutely.
right? It takes a lot of energy and effort to have it be unintrusive, to be of value, to be, clean and gliding. But when it does, it's a work of art.
Yep. It is an art, not a science. So can folks already access remotezeal.com? Is it something that's gone live, or is it something
you
that's
can visit
still
our
works?
website, We are product testing. We have some beta users currently in our community, but you can join the wait list and follow us on social to stay updated as things progress. We will be looking for some more beta testers to give us their feedback and test out the app, provide recommendations so that we can enhance it for the community at large, but anticipating on going live towards the middle of next year.
Okay, very cool. And is this something that the subscribers, is it a subscription-based service, or is it something that they can access for free? How does this application work? How does the
ZEAL will
service
have
work?
a freemium access. You'll be able to get kind of limited functionality. It'll still provide you a capability to do 1 to 2 trips and destination for more updates.
Absolutely. And we went over this before. You said it's remotezeal.com. Where can folks find you on social media platforms?
ZealRemote.com, and you can follow us at ZEAL Remote.
At ZEAL Remote. Okay, perfect. Eric, again, thank you so much for carving a slice out of your very busy day to be on the Velstrad podcast. We want to thank you all the listeners for tuning in. Thank you so much, guys, and have a good one.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jonathan.